All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into something, well, something that gets all of us. We're talking about our own defensive ego. We're going to break down a framework that's basically a tactical guide for finding some real inner peace. So let's just jump straight in.
So let's start with a feeling I'm pretty sure we all recognize. Have you ever had that moment? You know, the one where the world you've so carefully built up just shatters? It could be anything, right? A huge failure at work, your finances completely bottoming out, or your reputation just getting shredded. It's that feeling of hitting something hard, something that doesn't move.
Well, this framework has a name for that moment. It's called the wall. And what I find so interesting is how it's framed. It's not some kind of cosmic punishment or just a string of bad luck. Nope, it's just an encounter with reality, plain and simple. It's that exact point where the story you've been telling yourself about who you are smacks right into the truth. And yeah, it breaks. But here's the twist. The real pain, it's actually not coming from the wall itself. It's coming from something inside of us that the wall just reveals. That thing on the outside, the failure, the loss, that's just the trigger. The real collapse, the one that really hurts, that happens on the inside.
And this brings us to a really core concept called deep shame. Now, this isn't just about feeling guilty for that one thing you did wrong. No, it's way bigger than that. Think of it like this persistent internal static or noise that just totally clouds your judgment when you're under pressure. It's that fear of being seen as a failure, the heavy weight of things you've done, and yeah, even shame about our physical selves.
Okay, so if this is all happening on the inside, how does it actually show up on the outside? Well, when that deep shame gets triggered, it doesn't just stay put. It leaks out. And where does it show up? In our words, in the way we talk, in those knee-jerk defensive reactions we have.
And there's actually a really powerful 4-letter acronym that helps us diagnose these reactive self-protective urges. You can think of it like a tool, something you can use to catch yourself, twisting your own words in real time.
It's called JADE. Now, just think about it for a second. When you feel attacked or exposed, what's your default setting? What's your go-to? Do you justify your actions with a million excuses? Do you argue, getting into that verbal back and forth? Do you defend your character, your reputation? Or do you explain and over-explain because you're just desperate to be understood? That right there, that's the ego's leakage in action.
So what do we do about it? Well, the solution here isn't to build a better wall, a better defense, or just try to patch up our ego. It's actually to dismantle it. And this process has a name, kenosis. It basically means a voluntary self-emptying. Kind of wild, right? Let's take a look at how that actually works.
See, we all wear what this framework calls a uniform. It's this identity we've so carefully built to hide that deep shame we talked about. It could be your job title, your reputation as the expert, how you look, all of it. But man, constantly polishing and defending that uniform, it is absolutely exhausting.
And these uniforms, they can show up in all sorts of ways. Maybe you're the expert, the person who can never be wrong. Or maybe you're the provider, so you can't possibly admit you're having money problems. Or, hey, maybe you rely on a voice of command to kind of keep people at a distance. At the end of the day, they're all just masks. And they're all designed to hide our deep fear of failure.
So the big question is, how do you take the uniform off? Well, there's this incredibly powerful little drill. You take your absolute deepest fear of being judged, like people are going to think I'm a total failure, and you respond with just 2 words. Let them. Seriously, let them. Because if you can actually allow the world to think you're a failure, you suddenly don't have to spend all that energy pretending you're not. It's a radical kind of freedom.
Okay, so that's some pretty deep inner work. But let's bring this out into the real world. How does this whole self-emptying thing actually apply in, a real high-stakes conversation? The kind where your ego is just screaming at you to jade.
Believe it or not, it all starts with just 3 seconds. That's it, the 3-second pause. That is the core tactic. It's just a tiny little buffer that stops that immediate, panicked leakage from your ego. It gives your rational brain a chance to catch up. And that tiny little gap, that's the start of a totally different kind of conversation.
So instead of throwing up a defensive wall with your words, that 3-second pause lets you build something else entirely. It's called a golden bridge. The idea actually comes from Sun Tzu. The whole point is you give your opponent a way to retreat with their dignity intact. And when you do that, the truth can actually come out without having to fight a second war between 2 egos. I mean, just look at the difference here. You've got 2 paths. The ego response is pure instinct, right? You immediately jade. You blame someone else, you scramble to save your reputation, and you just spiral. But the logos response, that's tactical.
You pause, you consciously refuse to jade, you build that golden bridge for the other person, and you start treating your own flaws as just data, not as something to be ashamed of.
So, what's the end game here? What's the ultimate goal of this whole process? I mean, where does all this hard work, facing the wall, shutting down the jade, taking off the uniform, where does it actually lead? Well, it leads to a really fundamental shift in how you see yourself and your place in the world.
The final stage is this incredible move from being a victim, someone who just gets crushed by the wall, to becoming what's called a martyr. Now, that word in its original Greek just means witness. And a witness is someone who values the truth so much, so completely, that their own social comfort, their uniform, their reputation, it all just becomes irrelevant. They are literally willing to let all of that die just to stand for what is real.
And this transformation, right here, this is the whole point. You stop being the architect of your own internal noise. And because you finally silenced your own ego, you can start to hear the deep shame in other people. You can recognize when they're jading, and you see it for what it is, a cry from a threatened ego. And then you learn to build them a golden bridge instead of backing their pride into a corner. You become an engineer of mercy.
So this whole framework, it's really a path, isn't it? It's a path from that reflexive, knee-jerk self-protection to a really radical, truth-centered kind of peace. So I guess the final question is for you. Now that you've seen the map laid out, what noise in your life are you ready to silence? Which justification, which argument, which defense, or which explanation are you finally ready to let go of?